This is your friendly neighborhood author, Jonathan, and you are listening to Season 4 of the Floor Rejects podcast, The Wells House Phenomenon. Hi, listener. Hi, watcher. It's Jonathan here, your friendly neighborhood podcaster. I'm back in this neck of the woods with some upgrades. Jonathan, I can hear you saying, we're not here for this type of content. We're here for the story. We can talk about this after. And I hear you, and that's what we're going to do. But just know, this little thing is saving my life. So, we are currently reading Chapter 6 this week, but let's do a quick refresher on Chapter 5, Free Fall. We've got basically a very long chapter in which Warren endears himself to Lila and Thomas a little bit more, buying them presents, and after I guess you could consider the TV a present for everyone involved. But remember, he buys the TVs, he buys the router so that he can have some sort of internet in his house. And so in this chapter, we see him bringing in the 21st century, which is a modern creature comfort for most of us, and for him certainly. He brings it in to kind of settle himself in. And we're going to see a continuation of that in this week's chapter, of him getting more settled and more comfortable in his life at the Wells Manor. So that was pretty much it. The TV, the internet, it was all just kind of a foil of a machination of my own creation. I'm sorry, did I just say machination of my own creation? What is wrong with me? All of that was kind of just to bring Warren online so that he could interact with some men, so that Lila could stumble upon the list of things that he wanted to do to men, or that he wanted men to do to him. We don't really read it, we just know that it exists. But she still doesn't catch the hint, which I think is funny. And I think it also speaks to her her worldview, where she comes from, and how she's sort of existed for this long. So that's a lot of what happened in that last chapter. There was a storm, and during that storm, he just went to sleep. He's going to sleep a lot, and I believe in this chapter, let's see, I can't remember, only because I got a lot going on. Next day. Yeah, he's aware of his dreams. He's aware of what's going on, and he's becoming more. I don't know why it took me so long. Like, I didn't know that. He's becoming more sentient in his dreams, more bold in his dreams, and that's another theme we're going to see continued in this week. So that's pretty much all that happened. This week is where it starts to get a little bit more authentic to the way Warren really is, if that makes sense. And we're really going to see that dichotomy between awake Warren and sleeping Warren really, really well in this chapter and beyond. I have to get used to this new setup. Do you like this new setup? If you're listening, nothing has changed except for I talk more about what's around me. But if you're watching this, the new setup, huh? Everything's flipped around. Not important. We'll talk about it after. But thank you, of course, for listening or watching or both or whatever you're doing. And let's get into Chapter 6 of The Wells House Phenomenon on the Floor Rejects podcast. Can I pause you? Chapter 6. Changes. Days went by as Warren repeated this cycle. He spent the days wandering around, exploring the house slowly, finding that most of the second and third floor were rooms that at one time had all their own styles and had gradually become mirrors of each other as the house maintained its boarding function. The rooms appeared to be generally defunct, dusty, and unmaintained. When he asked Lila about it, she smiled and told Warren that he didn't need to worry, that those rooms were left closed up to keep the house warm in the winter and cooler in the summer. Warren accepted this answer, but when it came to the locked doors on the 4th floor, on the opposite end of the house is the new workroom, Lila was less helpful. In fact, she said that she wasn't quite sure what was in there, and that the rooms had been locked as long as she had worked there. A few weeks after he had asked about the boarding rooms, Warren asked if it would be okay to have a locksmith come out and open the locked doors, but she waved him off, telling him it was likely just storage that no one ever missed. The next day, which marked 6 weeks since he had arrived at the manor, he didn't remember the locked rooms at all. In fact, he found only as time went by, more and more he was apt to lay around, letting Lila hover around him, fetching him things before he could even ask for them. He couldn't remember that Lila had at one point possessed a blonde bob, a full figure, and light, airy makeup, or her original busty physique with long red tresses and piercing green eyes, and that today she was now a woman approximate to what poets and philosophers described Helen of Troy as, with thick, pin-straight black hair down to her waist, a tall, slight frame, and a broad, powerful face. The more her looks changed during the day, and the more things around him changed, the less he seemed to remember anything, as if he floated through a fog of shifting reality, completely unaware of the changes, only aware that he felt less and less inclined to leave the house, to do anything other than lay on the couch and let the TV play as his mind sat blankly. At night, Warren was channeling his energy and doing his best to understand what was happening to him. While he was still unsure of exactly how, he was sure of 3 things. Number 1, Lila was able to change her physical appearance while he slept. Number 2, the Lila in his dreams was really her, not his own mind making up a version of her. Number 3, Thomas knew what was happening, and he wasn't telling Lila what he had noticed. Thomas had seen Warren in the house during the dreams, had seen him on the 2nd floor, heard him when the figure had found him, and at one point had tried to speak to Warren, but Lila never mentioned it during her midnight visits. The figure, the dark, hooded thing floating around him in his periphery as he explored the house, he found that as long as he kept moving, kept looking for answers, that the figure kept its distance, often floating behind him and acting as a silent guard. He would paw through desks, boxes, anything that could hold answers. The dark, quiet house was suffocating him as he tried to pull all the pieces together. But everywhere he looks, nothing but blank pages and empty folders where he thought the answers would be hiding. The night of his 6th week, Lila came to visit him, her long hair sweeping around the door as she leaned in, her bright smile glinting in the dim light. "Warren, may I come in?" she asks, and Warren nods dumbly. She enters, leaning against the opposite edge of the bed. "Warren, do you need someone to keep you company? It's been a while that you've been here, and I know how lonely it can be." Her breasts are pressed up against her folded arms. Warren considers giving her the same line that resulted in the numerous changes to her appearance, but since she was still seemingly unaware of Warren's immunity to the memory changes, he decided to be honest with her, since the list of queer sexual acts she had seen hadn't filled her in. "You know, Lila, I don't need company. In fact, I only look to men for that type of company that I think you mean," he says, and Lila's brow wrinkles as it shoots up. "Oh, wow, I didn't realize. I guess that, well, it explains a lot," she says, leaning up and pulling her robe up tightly around herself. Warren doesn't say any more, staying tight-lipped to not let on that he was catching up to the impossible situation he was finding himself in, since he was pretty sure Lila was the one controlling the ever-changing world he was in. He had tried to leave a few times in his dreams, and had gotten as far as the gate before he woke up, disoriented but unaware of what was happening to him. It was so frustrating to know that during the day he wandered the house, morphing into an uninspired, sedentary creature. He had tried running at the gate, driving through the gate, calling for help, or even jumping from a window, hoping that at some point he would wake up enlightened or trigger his memory somehow, but after weeks of this, he had no idea how to save himself. The daylight version of himself was content, wealthy, and waited on, but the real Warren, the one that was awake at night, was becoming increasingly worried, and particularly paranoid that somehow this world he found himself in was going to be a never-ending trap. On this night, as Lila quietly gathered herself back up and made her way from the room, she turns to him with a slight smile on her face. "Good night, Master Wells." Her expression is pointed and leaves Warren with the image of her eyes as they shone darkly, the color of them changing as she leaves the room. When the door shuts, Warren shakes his head and chalks her eyes up to the dim lighting and the fact that he was sentient in a dream that appeared to be shared amongst multiple people. He stands up shakily, walking into the bathroom, flipping the light on and standing in it. He would come here often while he was sleeping, mostly because it was a central room that Lila never went to, and if she did, she always warned Warren in advance to maintain privacy. Her dream specter never went farther than visiting him once per night as soon as Warren was asleep. So as soon as she was gone, he would hide in the bathroom if he wasn't exploring. As he leaned against the bathtub, muttering to himself, he sensed movement in the mirror to his right. He looked, seeing the reflection of the dark figure as it materialized in front of the door. His breath catches for a moment, but at first it doesn't move towards him. He was used to it now. The thing wasn't bothersome as long as he wasn't still for too long. The form never rushed him past that first time that he had been sent over the railing. It stood there, or floated there, and finally Warren spoke when he had the capacity. "What? Do you have any suggestions?" he asks, masking his minor nerves and sarcasm. The apparition doesn't make a sound or move. He chuckles, pacing slowly around the room, looking at his reflection in the mirror. He sees the figure drift towards him, and as he thinks to move, the figure continues, slowly drawing closer and closer until it's just behind Warren's left shoulder. He doesn't turn as he anticipates its next move. He expects that it may not go any further, but just as he is about to move, it brushes through him, disappearing through the wall. Warren lets his burning breath out and moves back around to the door, looking around for a moment and ponders the bright white room before walking back to his bedroom. He has no sense of time while he's dreaming, so he has no idea when he will or won't wake up, and so he wastes no time. He moves quickly from the bedroom, catching sight of the figure as it begins to trace its way up the stairs, moving quicker than he had ever seen before. He lengthens his stride, catching up to the figure as it crests the 4th floor. He watches it drift towards the locked doors, the one he could now remember, and he sees it phase through them. He tries the handle, hoping that somehow in this in-between place that the doors would submit to him, but they do not. He rattles them quietly, but not hard enough to wake anyone. "Shit," he mutters, turning and walking back to the stairs, content to sift through old papers and books in the office until he fell back into his body. But he feels the cool thrill running down his spine that means the shrouded figure is back. He turns and catches it walking slowly behind him, stopping at the workroom door before disappearing through it. Warren runs in, catching the door handle as the door pops open on its own. In the room, the thing is standing in the center of the space on top of a worn, intricately decorated rug. With the moonlight streaming in and giving it a sort of ghostly halo, Warren is struck by a sense of familiarity at the sight of it. Just as a thought begins to develop in his mind, the room begins to darken, with the light from the windows turning first a dull pink, the room fading more as the light shifts blood red, and the whole place is engulfed in the light while he sees the figure start to melt down, lower and lower into the floor until the crown of its head is gone from the room. And Warren hears the same voice that always comes, telling him the same thing over and over. "Remember." Its voice echoes in the room, and Warren spins about, frustrated not to have guidance. The window begins to return to natural lighting, and Warren peeks out of it, down to the eerie, fog-laden landscape of the manor. The figure moves slowly over the grounds outside, never seeming to look up or around, making a beeline away from the building. As it gets farther and farther from the building, Warren has to squint, unsure that he can believe his eyes, because he could swear that the figure was morphing, or more aptly, turning into a recognizable person. He could only see the back of the person, a man, he thought, as he walked further from the building. Warren was seeing him almost clearly just as the fog swelled and the man disappeared. Warren runs from the room, bolting down the stairs and towards the front door, ready to track down the figure. But as he opens the door, he finds Thomas standing there, shovel in hand. Dirt smears across his face and white t-shirt. "Warren? What are you... how are you..." Thomas stutters, but Warren rushes past him, determined to catch the figure, to get the answers that had been floating around him for the last month and a half. As he races down the back lawn, he can see a wall of blackness rolling over the back half of the property towards him. That's new. He grunts as he runs in the last direction he saw the mysterious thing walking. As he crests a hill, he sees the small, decrepit graveyard come into view, the figure standing in the middle of it. "Hey, I want answers. Who?" Warren shouts as the black wall rolls over the gravestones. The figure begins to turn towards him, and just as Warren feels hope he will catch a glimpse of the face, the wall swallows the man in profile, and Warren skids to a stop, not bothering to turn and run. "Let's try again, I guess," he mutters as the world loses the last of its light and he can see nothing. Then his eyes snap open and he wonders what the smell drifting into his room is. He follows it, finding Lila, her black hair pulled severely in a bun, the gray streaks at her temples shining in the morning sun. He didn't remember her having so many wrinkles, but he assumes he just hadn't looked that closely. "Good morning, dear. I've made you your favorite, scrambled eggs and a bacon sandwich," she says, and Warren plops down at the breakfast nook, hungrily tearing into the sandwich as he hears the front door open. He can hear heavy footfalls drawing near. "Mother, I finished with the traps out back." Thomas's deep voice reverberates through the halls. "Oh, good. Thomas told me this morning that he saw some vermin out by the memorials. We wanted to make sure they remain undisturbed," she explains, and Warren nods, unfazed by the mentioning of his own familial graves. Thomas walks in the room, and Warren is struck by his presence. The man is tanned, his blonde hair glowing in the early light. He towers over Warren in his seat, his wide, muscled chest straining at the edges of his tight tank top. "Hey, Warren, how are you this morning?" Thomas asks awkwardly, sitting down across from him. Good, Thomas. Are you, have you had breakfast?" Warren murmurs, struggling to lift his eyes from Thomas's pert nipples poking through the thin fabric. "Yeah, we ate earlier, right, Mother?" he says, his voice somehow quiet, even with his voice so low and booming as he looks to his parent with an expression of questioning. "Yes, we normally do," she says over her teacup from across the room. "Well, do you need any help out there today? I've just been sitting around for days. I would love to get out and enjoy the weather," Warren says, and Thomas puts a hand over his mouth, smiling coyly. "Warren, I'll be working on some pipes for the cistern. It's got rust issues in the older sections. I don't think that would be something you would enjoy," he says, and Warren tilts his head, pulling at his earlobe in slow, fleeting thoughts. "You know, I would like to know more about the way to care for this place. Where's the well at?" Warren asks. Thomas snickers. If you insist. You know that old barn where we have the truck and trailer? Head straight out the back and keep going until you find me," he says, standing up and heading back the way he came, exchanging a knowing glance with his mom. As he leaves, she sits in his place, Warren finishing the last of his food. "He is just a peach," she says, her eyes sparkling as she looks out at the sprawling lawn. "He is. So quiet and calm. It's not what I'm used to. The men I've known have always been so volatile." "It's nice to have a bit of calm," Warren says, and Lila smiles. "I'll pack you a bag to take out for your work with Thomas. Don't worry about that," she says as Warren takes his plate to the sink. Warren smiles and heads to his room, dressing quickly and spraying an extra bit of cologne as he left. He found Lila standing patiently next to the front door, holding out an old metal cooler, and when she hands it to him, she gives him a pat on the hand. "Good luck out there today," she says, and Warren chuckles, unsure what she meant as he headed out to find Thomas. The barn was a farther walk than he remembered, and by the time he reached it, he was sweating bullets. He couldn't see Thomas, but he could hear the distant sounds of metal striking metal. He keeps on, hill after hill, until he finally notices a small mound of dirt in the distance, with more dirt piling up on it by the second. "I'm here," he shouts as he draws close enough to hear Thomas grunting in rhythm with the dirt he flings out of the hole he's in. I hope you brought something to drink," Thomas pants, hoisting himself out of the hole and flopping down on his back, his torso heaving. Warren laughs, opening up the cooler and pulling a thermos out and setting it next to Thomas. "I'll take a crack at it," Warren says, jumping down into the hole and grabbing the shovel. It's slick with Thomas's sweat, and Warren starts digging, assuming he's in the right spot. He hears Thomas snickering after a few shovelfuls, and Warren looks up to say something snarky, but finds Thomas leaning over the edge of the opening, grinning. "What?" Warren asks, wiping the sweat already running down the sides of his face. You're not shoveling right," Thomas says. "What do you mean? I'm shoveling," Warren says, pushing the thing into the dirt by the handle and haphazardly flipping the dirt up. Warren then tosses the meager amount of soil still in the scoop over his shoulder. "You have to, have you never used a shovel?" Thomas asks incredulously. "I have. Well, I mean, I've used the little ones, for planting flowers in window boxes. Same concept." Warren laughs. Thomas shimmies down into the hole. "Let me show you," Thomas says, and his hulking form has Warren pressed against the wall of the small area they were both in. Thomas takes the shovel and thrusts it down hard into the earth, then slams his boot down on the edge before carefully tilting it up and throwing it over his shoulders. As he does it again, Warren's eyes laser in on the bouncing of his rounded, straining biceps. With each punch into the ground, his golden skin ripples deliciously, and Warren can feel his body begin to react. So he looks up over the edge of the hole anywhere but at Thomas. "Let me try again," he says after a minute, and Thomas hands the shovel over, lifting his arms up to rest on the edge of their space. Warren shakes off his desire to look at the man's impressive wingspan. His second attempt at shoveling doesn't earn any laughs from Thomas, who pulls himself from the hole after a minute, and Warren falls into a rhythm, finding the motions and sweating therapeutic, giving his brain some time to reflect, and he begins to feel a little bit of clarity as he focuses, feeling like maybe he's thinking more clearly than he had in a while. He was vaguely aware that he had become more lazy, more prone to doing not much of anything since he'd arrived at the manor, which he blamed on the nightmares he kept having almost every night that left him waking up with the most intense, vague feeling of dreads about nightmare he couldn't remember. "How's it going?" Thomas's deep voice asks after a few minutes from the actual ground level. "Good. Hot. Where have you been?" Warren asks, panting and wiping his face as he sets the shovel aside and takes the thermos from the rim of the depression. "Sorry. I had to cut a section of pipe because I want it to be ready as soon as we find the leak. I think we're about there since the dirt is pretty muddy. Come on up," Thomas says, poking his head over the edge and offering Warren a hand. Warren takes it and Thomas lifts him up, and as Warren is drawn up higher, he has to immediately freeze his expression as Thomas has no shirt on. Thomas's glistening stomach rippled with rows of hard, rolling muscles, leading down into a defined, rounded V-shape, trimmed in light brown hair, and leading up into hulking pecs that flex as he pulls Warren up to his level, or more aptly, to eye level with his perfectly round, peaked nipples. Warren hums, stepping back without thinking to get some distance. He stumbles as his left foot slips back over the edge and he loses his balance. He begins to tip, windmilling his arms. Thomas reaches out and grabs Warren's forearm as he fell and yanked him back with a grunt, wrapping his arms around Warren as he overcorrects and falls against Thomas's body. "Oof, fuck. I'm sorry, Thomas. I'm always Warren begins, skittering cautiously away as he realizes that he was gripping the left side of Thomas's chest. "Hey, Warren, it's okay. It happens to the best of us," Thomas says, and Warren giggles nervously. "Still, so sorry. I can't believe I just grabbed you like that. It's so inappropriate," he says, and Thomas grins earnestly, his cheeks reddening. It's really fine, Warren. I promise I didn't. I mean, it didn't. It's not a big deal," he says, and Warren sits down on the ground at a distance, half to catch his breath as he was still recovering from the shoveling, and half because he felt a stirring in his stomach from the feeling of Thomas's searing hot skin mounted up in his hand. "I still apologize. I'll just catch my breath over here," Warren says, drawing his knees to his chest. He spent the majority of the repair there, or at the edge of the hole, handing Thomas tools that he needed as he cut out the damaged section of pipe and replaced it with a new section. As they finish the bonding process, Warren excuses himself to the house, humoring Lila as she commented on his filthy clothes. He told her he was going to clean himself up before dinner, and as soon as he got into the bathroom, he had to recenter himself, Touching Thomas, even accidentally, had him more energized and alert than he had been for at least a month. He considered relieving himself in the shower, but felt that doing that would open doors to too many new emotions. And so he quickly washed himself off, watching the tan water circle the drain for what felt like too long before he toweled down and redressed. He could hear the sounds of Lila preparing dinner, and he went out to the kitchen, sitting at the table in the nook and making small talk with her. And eventually Thomas's dinner was set out in the dining room. They ate and joked together, acting more like friends than Warren had been used to. And then he laid on the sitting room couch and watched old movies until he could feel sleep pulling at his eyelids earlier than normal from his hard day of labor. He crawls sorely into his bed, moaning with each movement until he flops down in just his underwear and socks above the duvet, his eyes shut and his mind quiet before the blankets finish crinkling under him. He opens his eyes, his dream world tonight all in tones of soft pink, as if all the bulbs in the house had been switched for rose-colored glasses. As his memories are intact and he still wants to get up and go back out to the graveyard, he can hear footsteps. He lies completely still. Thomas peeks his head in. Thomas? Warren yelps, scrambling to cover his body with the edge of the duvet. Thomas looks in uncomfortably. Hi, Master Wells. Do you need company tonight? He asks, looking straight at the ground. What? Warren squeaks. Okay, we're back. It's me, regular me, not reader me, regular me. Let's talk about Chapter 6. Now, did I write this while simultaneously trying to process a new medicine that I've never taken before meant to alter my brain chemistry? Yes. Did that lead to me writing this a little more quickly than I might have initially thought to write? Sexual tension between Thomas and Warren in a probably 30 to 35 chapter book. Also, yes. But I stand by my choice, and not just because slowly but surely, hopefully, the chemistry in my brain is evening out. I think that instead of pussyfooting around it, is pussyfooting a bad term? Are we allowed to say that? I'm not going to say it. Never mind. Forget that I said that. Instead of dancing around the idea of Warren being attracted to Thomas, because he's already kind of made it clear that while his ideal type might be one type of person, he's not unaffected by other types of men. Which is normal and something I think we can all understand, unless you aren't attracted to people, in which case I am wildly jealous of your success. But let's not stop there. I figured we should get into it sooner rather than later because we just spent basically about 6 chapters with Lila kind of haphazardly and unknowingly changing, trying to meet Warren's expectations, all the while, I guess, not realize. Well, I don't say I guess. We know that she didn't realize that it was because he's gay that he wasn't interested in her. And we figure out why she doesn't just immediately pick up on it like we would pretty quickly here. But so now we're kind of switching over, and Thomas is taking over the role of Lila in the sensuality department. Here's the thing that I tried to keep with Thomas. His whole thing is not that he's cold. He's never really mean to Warren or rude to Warren. He's just quiet and kind of awkward. Like when he gets the pocket knife from Warren. I don't do it justice with my stupid little nasally vocal fry voice, but if you read it in your head in the narrator's voice of your choice, if you read it like that, then I think it makes a little bit more sense, the tone of it. You get a little bit less of my intonation and more of the actual character. Because Thomas himself isn't really rude. He's just kind of standoffish in the first 5 chapters. Obviously, he's letting his mom take the lead. She's used to having attention. We're not really sure what's going on with them, but we can assume that he's used to his mother always having most of the attention. And so now he's stepping into her role and she's stepping back. We can see that she's changed her appearance again, maybe a little more subtly, just with some gray streaks in her hair and more wrinkles that Warren notices, but he just assumes he hadn't noticed before because he doesn't remember during the day what she looked like before. These new sensations and things, they inspire new emotions in him. And so I try and separate the two. Like, yes, their appearances change and he doesn't notice them because he thinks they've always looked that way. But because he hasn't actually experienced them in that way before, the emotions or reactions that he has to their appearances are new every time they change. So he does have new reactions. He just assumes every time that, oh, I just didn't notice it before. Oh, that's just something. So that's part of the thing that I tried to keep cohesive through the story is we get a little more of a role, not reversal, but a role, like a transference of a role. Sorry, microphone. A transference of the role, like the sensual role kind of shifts to Thomas, but even as it shifts to Thomas, he still can't really just automatically absorb the way that Lila is so natural with it. I think it's very interesting. I think within the next 5 or 6 chapters, it's kind of revealed how they do this. The question is, how long do I want the story to be, and how quickly can I make the entire story go? And how quickly do I want to? I don't know. I certainly don't want 45 chapters like last season. I would be fine with 30 chapters at the most. So we're about fifth of the way through. So we've seen the first shift. So we've seen now that Thomas can, in theory, do the same thing Lila does. You will also notice that Thomas's change is not as complete as Lila, because she changes hair colors every time. Her skin color changes. Her eye color changes. The first time she looked like the red, what is it, the red lady from Game of Thrones. That's kind of what, in my head, she looked like a young version of the Red Lady, or a younger version of the Red Lady from Game of Thrones. And then she looks like Marilyn Monroe, and then she looks like Helen of Troy, or maybe like Salma Hayek. Something like that. A very beautiful, broad, expressive face with long black hair. Anyway, not important. We're not here to sexualize women in my stories. We're leaving women alone. We're like really leaving women alone. They're kind of not happy about it, but that's okay. So anyway, Thomas, he doesn't change completely. He's still a blonde. He's basically beefier and tanner. And I think it's interesting to think about that just for a second, in that when Lila changes her appearance, she believes that she has to completely make a 180-degree change to be at least acceptable to Warren. But then when she finds out that he's interested in men, she's like, oh, slap some muscles on him and we're good to go. His age doesn't seem to really change that much. Maybe his voice is a little bit deeper, but we don't know for sure, right? Because 1, we can't hear it, and 2, the only way that we can approximate it is with my voice, and I sound like a squirrel. End of sentence, like a squirrel. So some things that I like about this chapter, or some things that I'm working on that I think I did well in this chapter, is firstly the fact that at the beginning of the chapter is basically just like skipping forward 3 or 4 weeks, right? We've had the first couple of weeks with Warren, and then we skip forward like a month. And I like that. And I like the first few paragraphs a lot, in where we cover a bunch of ground. He asks about these locked doors. He talks about them over a period of a few days, and then all of a sudden he doesn't remember the locked doors while he's awake. And I think it's interesting that his memories are left somewhat intact at some point, and then some of them are taken and others are left, and parts of the same memory are left. And he's also he's really just morphing into this lazy blob. And I like the dichotomy of it. I like that we're getting like polar opposite ends of Warren. when you put them together, you get normal, like, kind of entitled, angry, unmotivated, but also motivated to not do anything Warren. But when you separate them, you get the essence of Warren, which is like this determined, scared, smart, cunning, bold person, and then this other half of Warren that he's becoming in the daytime that is just like a sloth, just doesn't care. And the only time he gets up off the couch for weeks is to follow some like hunk out to watch him dig a hole. I also find the whole shovel thing funny. The amount of times I had to say the word hole was uncomfortable for me, but I think that's a funny little scene. I would also like to just take a moment to say how hard it is to write sensual, erotic descriptions of most parts of the masculine or male of the what's the best word of masculine bodies, I guess is the right word. I think you get what I mean. There's not a lot, like there's a billion words, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, not to shame women at all, because women have it hard enough. There's a million words for boobs. There's a million words for boobs and butt and vagina and not that all women have vaginas, but you get what I'm saying. Vaginas and all sensual things that are associated with femininity. There's a million euphemisms for them. The only thing that there's a bunch of euphemisms for when it comes to men, and you know what it is, it's their penises. Don't get me wrong, all for a penis appreciation post, but I'd like more sexy words for parts on men's bodies. I'd like to sexualize men more, please. I know that that's controversial. I know it's problematic because we're just not supposed to sexualize anyone. But I think men deserve it a little bit. I think men deserve to be sexualized a little bit, and I think I should be the one to do it. Why are there not more terms for a masculine presenting chest, just a big hulking, like, why are there not more words? You can see it in your mouth. I got this as a Christmas present to myself. I've told you guys about it before. The Tom of Finland comics, the artist known as Tom of Finland. He inspires a lot of the things that I write, just the way that he subverts the traditional sexuality of a male. Yeah, I think that's the right way to say that. So, like, look at this. I think there's no penises on it. Well, there is one, but you can't see it. Look at this. Okay, can you see it? Hopefully you can see it. Don't look at my fingers. Do you see? Am I pointing at it? Look at these. Look at these breasts. Do you see them? That's what I'm talking about. Why are there not more words for this, or more words for? I mean, men's butts. You can't see. Here, look at the back. There's no penises on the back either. Why are there not more words for this? There's lots of kind of feminina words for that, but there's not a lot of masculine words for that. Why are there not more sexual, sensual words to describe the muscles and curves and contours of a man's body in the same way that there are a feminine body? Why is that? This book, by the way, is on Amazon. Fuck Jeff Bezos. Yeah, Jeff Bezos. Fuck Jeff Bezos. But this book is on Amazon. The price did drop. It's a little hardcover book. It's very nice. I cannot show you literally anything on the inside because I think that means the video gets taken down. Because literally the first actual page of this book, and I highly recommend that you get it. The first actual page of this book, past the kind of like descriptors, and even before that, there's just, you can't see this on camera, can you? No, okay. There's just huge dongs. But then there's also, and this is kind of what I talk about, if you want to see what I'm talking about, just Google Tom of Finland. There's these huge hypermasculine figures, right? These giant muscle bodies. They're so masculine in their presentation, right? But then the thing that Tom of Finland, that I can't remember his real name, the thing that Tom of Finland does is that he takes those huge masculine bodies, these masculine, bulbous, just ridiculously proportioned bodies, and he puts them into these these like more traditionally, I guess, feminine or submissive or subversive positions and situations, and there's no shame in it, right? That's what I love about his art so much, but that's not what we're here to talk about. I do highly recommend this book, though. If you can get your hands on it, I think it's about $20 right now, and it's like 600. It's the complete collection of his original comics, so would highly recommend. But anyway, back to, again, I told you guys in the Sims video that I made, but I'm still kind of adjusting to my meds and also the state of the world in my life right now. But back to this chapter. So he hasn't changed that much. He just kind of sounds like a Tom of Finland illustration. Love that, obviously. I wrote it. I love it. It's not Warren's ideal type, but he's been so starved for attention, and we can tell that as he's getting lazier and lazier, he's also not taking care of his urges, obviously, as frequently. But I like that in all of that, he's kind of still like, I don't want to touch you. I don't want to sexualize you. I don't want to interact with you in that way or open that door because it's not smart of me to do that. Like, even in his most base mind where he's like he can't even think for himself at this point. He's like, I'm not going to do that, right? And in his full mind, as soon as Thomas walks in the door, he's like, uh-oh, this is going to be bad. Because it's the very bold, take no prisoners, do what I want version of himself. He knows it's going to be trouble. I think we know where it's going to end up, but I think it's going to be fun to follow them on their relationship of self-discovery and figuring things out. Oh no, did I spoil the whole thing? No, not really. I think you know that this is it's gay. It's going to get gay at some point. Hello, it's me. I'm gay. It's my only personality trait. I'm the people that everybody hates, and that's okay. So that's what I really like about this chapter. There's some things I still need to work on. I'm actually doing this thing now where I write the entire chapter, and this one was a little bit shorter. It was about a fifth shorter than the other ones, which is okay, I think. Where I'm writing the whole thing, and then I go back and let the computer read it to me, and I'll pause if I hear something that just doesn't sound right. And I do think that helped me have less kind of clunky phrases, or at least have a little familiarity with what I was reading right before I read it. And I do like that. I think it helped me get in the zone a little bit more. So I think that's about it. I do want to tell you guys this is exciting. You're currently looking at me through a ring light. I know, it's very brave and controversial and so exciting. Because I decided that I was tired of looking like I live in a cave. So I got a ring light, and my phone's mounted in it, and it has this little thing right here, which is very exciting. I'll show you what that does in a minute. But it also does this, that, this, that. Anyway, it does some fun stuff. I'm really trying to incentivize myself to keep going, because it is getting harder for me to just devote 15 to 20 hours every week just to doing this, when I feel like not to get down on myself. Don't stop listening if you don't want to see someone get down on themselves, but I kind of just feel like I am not good enough at this for it to be something that other people want to share with me. And that's been a hard pill to swallow. And I'm okay. I get it. It makes sense. And I also have to consider that the world doesn't revolve around me, and that other things are going on that have kind of put listening to podcasts at the wayside right now. And I started this podcast, before coronavirus hit or really was spoken of at all. But a large portion of it has taken place during the U.S. election, during the Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery losses, and so much more amongst the Black Lives Matter movement kind of being reinvigorated. A lot of stuff has been going on, so I've been trying to keep that in mind. But I have kind of been I think getting down on myself and kind of reading too much into everything around me, and I want to just do this for fun. You know what I mean? That's what I set out to do it for, and I think I treat it too much like a job because I want to be. For some reason, I feel the need to be professional for something that's not my job. If that makes sense, I don't know how to explain it. Because some people, like people who are in the entertainment industry, are like so religious with how they do their podcasts. But I have to stop and think to myself, most of those people are in the entertainment industry full time. That's their job. They don't have 40 or 60 hours a week where they're doing something completely different, and then they have to make time for this kind of on the back end. So I'm trying to keep myself level-headed, focused, but also stay on track because I don't want to. For the few people who do listen who really like it, first of all, please tell a friend. Tell 3 friends. Please leave a review. Preferably on Apple Podcasts because that's where I can see them. But, anywhere really is great. Send me an email. Tweet at me. Twitter at me. But tell a friend. For the few people who do listen, who maybe, I don't know, but who do listen and like these stories or just want someone to kind of talk at them or listen to them. Sorry, my dad called in the middle of me being emotional. But I was just saying, I've been doing my best to kind of keep in mind that, number one, I don't have the reach that people who work in entertainment industries do, and I don't have the experience or the means that a lot of people do, and I'm keeping that in mind, and I'm keeping myself feeling happy about what I'm doing and what I'm sharing. So if you do like anything that I'm creating, if you liked season 2 and 3, or if you liked season 1, or if you like season 4, share it with somebody, let somebody know, leave a review. But don't leave a 1-star review. If you're going to leave a 1-star review, that's homophobic. Don't do it. Every month is Pride Month, so don't do it during Pride Month. But enough getting down on me. I told you I was going to show you what this remote does. Sorry, microphone. It's in the way. But let me show you what it does, okay? So it's got this little button on the side, and I flip it, right? And it's got a little light on here. And all I have to do is I just point it at the camera, right? And it does this really cool thing where... watch. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3.